Anyway, I'm really excited to be able to introduce Evan Wade today. He is, well, I'm going to read a little bit of his bio because it's amazing, but from Brooklyn Community Garden to Valley Forge Cattle Ranch. Evan spent the last few years immersed in the local food and ecological farming movement. And about 5 years ago, he formed the Farmers Guild, which is a growing network of communities around California that unite beginning farmers around issues of food justice, security, and sustainability, and incubating the next generation of agricultural entrepreneurs. And I just want to say that I've had the amazing, awesome pleasure of getting to know Evan over the last couple of years. I've gotten to attend some of the amazing events the Farmers Guild has. Like, the most memorable one was the Farmers Olympics last summer. So if you ever want to push the field around full of compost, or hunt hay on the back of a truck, or watch other people do it, it's a really, really fun event, and it's kind of focused on the Grange building down the road. So there's a lot of great activities. Those are just some of the fun ones. There's some other great things that they'll be sharing. But I also want to say that Evan took a big lead in really helping Sonoma Compost, putting together a petition and getting the word out about what was happening with Sonoma Compost, and putting some pressure on some of our local elected officials. So I have a particular debt of gratitude and deep appreciation for Evan, and I'm really happy to have him here. So please join me in welcoming Evan Wade.
All right, is the slideshows out here? Oh, thanks so much for having me out here this morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, I'll go ahead and start off with just a question, a little trivia here. Does anybody in this room know the average age of a farmer in Sonoma County? 50 years old. 50 years old? What's that? 32. Anybody else?
69.
43. All right, yeah, lots of different numbers here. The answer is 60 years old and rising. I did hear that somewhere in there. There you go. All right. She owes you $20. I really like that. I'm going to start using that over to the Farmers Guild. But Farmers Guild doesn't have a lot of money, so I'll just I'll find them in eats. So, what is the Farmers Guild? It started out when I moved out to Valley Forge. If you've ever been to Valley Forge, town 126, it's a lovely place, beautiful, yes, jewel of Sonoma County. And I moved out to a cattle ranch out there where we were converting it to an organic pasture-raised, grass-fed cattle operation, beef operation, diversified with pigs and chickens and blueberries. And when I moved out there, I knew I was coming from New York City, so obviously I was in for something new. One thing I didn't entirely expect was that we would be, me and a couple of folks who were working on this ranch would be not only the only people under the age of 30, but some of the few people under the age of 60. So it was a culture shock for us in a lot of ways. My friend had basically taken over management of his family's farm and was trying to do things differently, trying to restore the land through a lot of regenerative agricultural techniques. And for the first couple of years we were out there, we pretty much kept to ourselves. We would try to engage with the older dairymen at the general store, but that really doesn't get you very far. They don't take you under their wing and say, let me teach you how to farm. So what we did was several years of trial and error, which was a lot of fun, a lot of mistakes, and a lot of rebuilding fence lines where they should be. Then we found out there was 2 other farms in the area with young folks. Folks in their 20s and 30s, either coming at agriculture for the very first time, or returning to family ranches and farms and trying to give it a go and trying to do things in a new way using the resources of their family. So we started this little thing called the Valley Forge Young Farmers Association. And at the beginning, all that really entailed was every Monday we would invite them over to our ranch. We were at the cattle ranch, we had a lot of extra ground beef leftovers, we would make meatloaf. We started what was called then Meatloaf Monday. It's similar to this, just get into a room, you talk shop, share resources, trade tips, and it was really just 6 or 7 people who showed up. A couple weeks into it though, another rancher, a young guy who was raising sheep from down the road showed up. And he said, sure, come on and sit down, join joined us at the table. The following week, he brought a friend. The following week, a couple people came from a range even further away. A month later, an entire team of interns from Green Train Farm show up, and suddenly our Meatloaf Monday doubled. And it kept happening, and it kept growing, and people kept showing up, and suddenly, every single Monday at our ranch, it was packed. Our entire house was just overflowing with these young folks who were farm interns, or range hands, or interested in agriculture, or maybe they're chefs even, just farm-to-table chefs who want to meet young farmers or new farmers doing things differently. And so this little group of people that started out years out outside of our barn suddenly grew into something much larger. This is just the parade in tamales representing. But suddenly it grew incredibly fast. And what first happened was the owner of the ranch, my friend's great aunt, she said, no more Meatloaf Mondays, it's getting out of control. There's too many cars parked out, there's a liability issue anyway. So we said, well, what are we going to do? So people just kept on showing up. That's what happened. Is every Monday, folks would still show up, even though we called everyone and said, no more Meatloaf Monday, it's got to stop. They kept on showing up anyway. So at that point, what I realized was, why are they showing up? It's because there is no space for them. There is this new generation that's interested in agriculture, despite the rising age of the American farmer, despite the economic challenges that farmers face. There are young people who are interested in growing food, in storing our land, and using our natural resources in a way that's both productive as well as sustainable. So we decided to create this space. It didn't exist. If these folks didn't have anywhere else to go, we decided to just give it a name. We decided to change the Valley Forge Young Farmers Association to what was then called the Farmers Guild, or let's call it the Young Farmers Guild. And then we nixed the young because for two reasons. One, well, we will eventually, yeah. The two main reasons, though, was one, everyone has their own definition of what is young. So people were asking, is this like FFA or 4-H? And then for those who don't recognize it, anyone under the age of 60 is technically a young farmer. There was a lot of confusion. So the other reason that we realized is that we would actually start getting legitimately old farmers showing up. And that was the most valuable resource that we could possibly have, was that young folks, especially first-generation farmers getting into it, they may be talented, they may be intelligent, they may have resources, they may be able to do a lot of the things that farmers need, but one thing they don't have, a lot of them, is social capital. And this is something that is incredibly valuable. Obviously, you probably are joining the Rotary Club for that reason. I mean, there's a lot of resources you can get by simply sharing a table with people, knowing people, building those networks. For young folks moving out to towns of 100 people, it's very hard to gain those kind of networks. A fifth-generation rancher who's been around for his entire life, he can borrow his uncle's livestock trailer. He can call up his grandma and he's willing to plant the asparagus. He can, all these kind of resources that a lot of folks take for granted. When you're brand new to agriculture, let alone a town or a county, those resources turn out to be incredibly valuable. And that's what we tried to create with the Farmers Guild. What ended up happening was we moved to the Grange Hall down the road here, and people kept showing up. We did it on a monthly basis. We would meet up, we'd have presenters come in, we'd have conversations, and gradually people started showing up from further and further away. So it started out where it's basketball, and then suddenly we started getting people from Petaluma, and then from Sonoma Valley, and people started coming in. People started driving in from Mendocino. One night, we got someone from Yolo County. She drove like 3 hours just to come to this thing. And at that point, we realized, well, rather than having it just right here in Sebastopol, why don't you just start your own? They were complaining about their drive, so let's start your own. So the folks in Sonoma Valley said, screw this, we're going to start our own. And they did, and we helped them out with it. Folks in Mendocino said the same thing. I drove up there, talked to a bunch of people, talked to the Grange Hall out there. Now there's the Mendocino Farmers Guild. Over the course of the last few years, we now have 10 Farmers Guilds around California, stretching from Humboldt down to San Luis Obispo. So obviously it was a need that whose time had come. And this is what it looks like, pretty much. It's kind of like this. A little younger, a little scrappier, a little more dirty fingernails, but essentially it's folks getting together and sharing resources, talking shop. One of the things we do is, this is the Farmers Guild, we put up 2 boards. One says I have, one says I need. Over the course of the evening, people just read down. I need a job. I need to borrow a tractor for 1 day. And I need some extra alfalfa or whatever. I have sows. Someone's got sows for sale. There's someone looking for CSA shares. There's someone looking for a greenhouse poly wire or whatever. And we also started opening up our organization to getting involved in the community in the same way that Rotarians here get involved in the community and recognize as really being a part of a community. We did the same thing. When the Valley Fire started, not that long ago, it was actually Sunday, so like a day after the fire started, someone called me up and said, you know, there's farmers and ranchers out in Lake County who are losing everything. And unfortunately, for small-scale farmers, they don't have a lot of insurance. You can get your house insured, you can get some of your crops insured, some of that, but there's so many little infrastructure things, and crops and things like that, that simply don't add up into the final toll of when it comes to relief. So we said, sure, we'll do what we always do. We'll have a potluck, and we'll get everybody together and pass around a hat, throw some money into it, and send it out to Lake County. Next thing we knew, people were calling us from all over the place. Farmers coming in and saying, I'm going to bring a bunch of food, we'll cook it up. Shops were contacting us saying, well, we'll cook up that food for everybody there. Some people were offering donations of auction items. And keep in mind, these are primarily young farmers who don't have a lot to give. So it was incredible to see in a matter of 4 days, we were able to put on an event that brought in over 400 people and raised $20,000 simply for farmers and ranchers who are losing things. So to the woman who was out there fixing fences, that's incredible. And I mean, imagine entire farms that fences just burnt down, right? I mean, there's just barbed wire lying on the ground with no wooden posts to pull them up. So we sent out truckloads of alfalfa and livestock feed, fencing materials, all of that. And it was just really a testament to what community can do. Obviously, I don't need to speak to you about that. You know why you get here. Get up early in the morning to join your fellow community members, because you can be able to pull off things like that. So the Farmers Guild does workshops, educational programs. We're in it to support and really advocate for that next generation of farmers. There is a reason why the average age of the American farmer is 60. And there's also some serious concerns about that. In the next 10 years, 10 or 15 years, there's going to be a piece of property the size of the Louisiana Purchase. Just think about that. The Louisiana Purchase of farmland is going to change hands. So that is the largest transfer of property in really American history since Thomas Jefferson, right? So who's going to inherit that? If the age is continually going up, and if farmers are not getting into it, there was a time when Americans were 90% farmers. Today it's less than 1%, and that's 58 is the national. Sonoma County, for some reason, despite our support of the young organic farmers, is actually higher. 73% of farmers rely on off-farm income to make ends meet. It's not a business to get into to get rich quick. Meanwhile, 2 acres of farmland is lost each minute. And since the time we all sat down for breakfast this morning, we've already lost farmland, a huge portion. This is just development, urban sprawl, simply the fact that it's more lucrative to put up a few condos than it is to grow arugula, right? So we're obviously in a trend that's dangerous, really, when it comes to food security, when it comes to the ability to feed ourselves sustainably. And so what we're trying to do is create a system where the farmer is integrated into the community. What's happened over the course of the last 100 years in industrial agriculture is everything has become so incredibly conglomerated. You have a very small handful of very large global corporations that control and own the production of our food. I know everybody probably loved the sausage we had this morning, and I'm not sure where it came from, but chances are It's closer to 70% of all pork produced in America comes from Smithfield. And for those of you who've been following the news of, I think it was last year, exactly. So the vast majority of our pork is owned by a Chinese company. And this is the way it's going. It's the same for soy, it's the same for seeds in corn, it's the same for cattle. 4 companies, 4 global corporations own more than 90% of cattle production. And then here we were in Valley Forge trying to do true grass farmed beef, is competing with enormous corporations. So why are farmers struggling so much is because they've been put in a position, and when Smithfield, when I say Smithfield, they're not the ones on the ground, working the farm, or the pigs themselves, right? They simply create the vertically integrated apparatus, which begins with the ownership of the genetics of the pigs and ends with the plastic on packaging and everything in between. The only thing they don't necessarily do is raise pigs. So that's the farmer's job, and the farmer simply has to sign a contract which enters into Smithfield's line chain of production, which means they raise the pigs exactly how Smithfield wants them to. They go in debt to get the infrastructure that Smithfield requires of them, and they produce pork in the same way you would produce cogs, widgets in a factory system, and they get the price they get. If you ask any farmer, one of the old sayings is farmers are price takers, not price makers. And that limits farmers in being able to do things differently, in allowing farmers to be innovative in ways that preserve, for instance, topsoil, or to do things in a way of distributing to their local community as opposed to a central distribution company that's overseen by a Chinese executive somewhere. So what we're trying to do is support different kinds of agriculture. The folks that we're working with are the ones who are starting CSAs, the ones that are selling to farmers markets, the ones that are starting to make inroads into even some of our local grocery stores, whether it's Community Market or Whole Foods here in Sebastopol, and really trying to push for that local, sustainable agriculture that we start seeing a lot. And that creates autonomy for the farmer to be able to make decisions about how they raise the food that we eat. Because if you are stuck in a situation where you're just one cog in this machine, you have no say. You have no say as to how you run your farm. So we're trying to create an empowered farmer who can grow food in the ways that we want and need. Meanwhile, we're up against some very serious challenges. This is a sign from across the street over at Safeway. This says, support farms in your neighborhood. Go local. What's your definition of neighborhood? I mean, my definition of neighborhood is like bicycle proximity, or at least maybe like, a couple hours drive, right? We did a survey 2 months ago. We went around to all the grocery stores in the area. That was us. And we basically counted all the local ingredients. We walked through and we talked to the produce buyers at these different places, went to Oliver's, went to Whole Foods, Food Market, all that. And found out, well, you see this everywhere. You see giant signs that say go local and all of that. And well, Safeway came in last, dead last. Safeway had 3 different varieties of mushrooms from the same company that was local. And when I say local, I mean this county or surrounding counties. So it's a good 150-mile proximity. It's not like I'm saying just about the whole. Whereas place Oliver's had almost 40. Whole Foods here in Sebastopol did pretty good. Whole Foods in Petaluma did pretty bad. Community Market did all right. Andy's Pacific Market, but basically what we're trying to do is encourage them to walk their talk. We don't simply want to just go around pointing fingers. Our goal is that we're going to do this survey again next year. We're going to see if they can improve those numbers, and we can work with them in doing so. So one way that we're going to be doing that is on December 2nd, it's going to be the first Tuesday of December. We throw every year, or sometimes twice a year, we throw a speed dating event. Where essentially we invite farmers and ranchers, put them on one side of the table. We invite buyers, grocery stores and restaurants and chefs and caterers. We put them on the other side. And everybody gets a few minutes to sit down and meet each other. And maybe they're a match, maybe they're not, maybe there's some traction, and they pass out cards. But the whole point is that we're trying to get farmers into the markets and making those direct relationships so that they're not simply taking whatever price they can get through the wholesaler that ends up selling what we consider anonymous food. Because when it's anonymous food, when milk is milk, then you only get one price for it. But when you can buy Strauss milk at the grocery store, for instance, Strauss now has the ability to do something different. Because it's not simply taking one price that's a fixed price depending on the market fluctuations and whatever's going on in Wall Street or whatever. It's about what is the actual cost that we need to provide for our farmers. How is the drought affecting those farmers? What can we do to increase the productivity of our grasses and provide better living wages for the workers on these farms? And in that way, you're actually working with an individual entrepreneur who can make decisions based upon what they know is best for their communities, for their labor force, for the environment, and a better quality milk. So that's the goal that we're working with. I want to talk about scarcity here real quick. Kind of getting messed up here, but all right. People talk about scarcity and the challenge we're up against. We got 8 billion people to feed. We have to increase yields. What are we going to do? We're running out of food. But one day people go hungry. Like I said, the average age of American farmer is rising. 22% of U.S. children live in poverty. Average price of California farmland is skyrocketing. It's really absurd what it costs to just get a piece of farmland. California snowpack at 5% of normal levels. 10% of farms produce only nearly 75% of agricultural products, meaning that 90% is really struggling to make a dent in our food system. Majority of American farmland, I already talked about that one. Less than 1% of Americans claim farming as their primary occupation. Meanwhile, fewer than 1 in 4 farms gross more than $50K revenue. So, when you say we have all these small farms, they're not making a lot of money. A lot of these are hobby farms, a lot of these are folks buying ranchettes here in West County and kind of maybe managing I heard a fellow here who has an acre or so of apples. That's the kind of farm that they're talking about when they're talking about these smaller farms. But what are the kind of farms that actually can provide a living, a livelihood for a family? That's what we're interested in. Abundance. So, that's what we want to look at, because when we think about scarcity, we think of, okay, what are we going to do to rectify the problem? Well, let's just increase yields. Let's use GMOs, let's use pesticides, let's use anything we can possibly do to produce more food for more people. When really, we have quite enough food. We really do. A third of all food is wasted. Actually wasted. That's an absolute statistic. There's, whether it's on the farm, whether it's in distribution, whether it's rotting on the shelves, whether it's thrown away at restaurants, whether it's food that you don't eat at your home, whatever it is. If a farmer can't sell their 20 tons of tomatoes at a price that's going to make it worth their while to distribute it, they're going to throw it away. That's what we're up against. That's that chain that I was talking about. It's not worth it to ship it to the central distribution headquarters and then distribute it out. Then they're just going to throw it away. It happens every single day. 40 million acres of lawn in the U.S. Now, the reason I bring this up is because people are concerned about the drought. People are concerned about access to land. We're running out of land. Well, there's actually a lot of land, and at least 40 million acres of it is irrigated. Grass, lawn grass, is the single largest irrigated crop in America. We have more acres in irrigated lawns than we do in any other irrigated crop. So why I bring this up is that right now we work with an organization called FarmLink that allows us to match farms with homeowners. So say you've got 5 acres in your backyard. Maybe you've bought one of these ranchettes here, or maybe you simply have a larger piece of property, even if it's just a couple acres. Most people think about farms in terms of large, factory farms. So of course your little 5-acre plot isn't going to do anything. Maybe you'll put in a couple of trees, maybe you'll put in some tomatoes for yourself. The fact is, farmers who are coming to our guild are actually starting to build livelihoods for themselves, doing intensive agriculture, bio-intensive agriculture on very small parcels, doing it so it's high labor but low land costs. And they're able to actually produce a lot of food on a very small parcel. Singing Frogs Farm right here in Sebastopol, really great example of it. He's only working with a few acres. He's able to pull in enough money to hire a staff and be able to provide numerous restaurants and CSA members, as well as 4 or 5 different farmers markets. So we then match young farmers who only need 1 or 2 acres to get started with landowners who, I don't know, like you've got to pay for a landscaper to come through and take care of your property, or you can actually get some income, not a lot, but some income, and actually have your backyard edibly landscaped and maybe get a box of vegetables on your doorstep every week. I think it's a win-win situation, and we're seeing it happen more and more. We simply have to get people to start thinking about their lawns as potential, not only potential food, but also as a potential livelihood for an agricultural entrepreneur here in our county. And there's $10,000 spent on groceries, but typically, according to USDA, 9 cents of every dollar we spend on food goes back to agriculture. And that's not profit for farmers, that's simply agriculture. 31% of that, so 31 cents on every dollar goes to just simply the service industry. And I got nothing against restaurants, I like restaurants, but when we're spending more than 3 times as much on being served our food, that's simply the waitresses, that's simply the restaurants, that's simply the retail space, on that than we are the actual food that's being produced. We've obviously got a system that's a little skewed. And when farmers are trying to do things differently or try to make a living for themselves, but the majority of the food is going to distribution or retail space, or to the service industry or insurance, it's a challenge for farmers to really do that. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can get more of the percentage of the food dollar back to the farmer. And that's direct buying for grocery stores. So when Oliver's buys direct from the farmer as opposed to going through a distributor, then more of the money is going to go to the farmer and not the distributor. When you join a CSA, that's even more so the case. That's almost 100%. I mean, they're going to pay for some of the costs of transportation and things like that, but that's a direct cost to a farmer to make a living for his or her family through the production of food for you. 1 in 3 consumers will now pay, this is a recent statistic we came up with, 25% more for local food, which is obviously why Safeway put up that sign, right? But if we can get people to actually recognize what is truly local, what is actually going direct to the farmer, then there is a change in the consciousness of American consumers that they're willing to pay more for good food that agrees with their own ethical stance. So we want to make sure we can start funneling those good intentions towards the kind of revenue that's going to allow farmers to really make a living for themselves. Another thing is, I love wine as much as anyone else, but if you were to divide the amount of wine that we have in Sonoma County by the number of people we have in Sonoma County, we would all be drunk indefinitely. Yay! If we were to divide the number of the acres in vegetable production by every resident in Sonoma County, we would all get a 7-foot by 7-foot plot to survive on all year. Just think about that. Over 70% of farmland will change hands in the next 20 years. People are looking at millennials as being the next wave in food because they're really interested in food. So it comes down to the opportunities we have to reform our food system are infinite. Despite the challenges that young farmers face, despite the challenges that a local food system faces, we have huge opportunities. So what we do as the Farmers Guild is we represent a new generation of farmers that advocate for policy change, supports and allows for those young entrepreneurs to make it, educate, inspire, cross-pollinate, train, and gather. So I really appreciate we do a number of different workshops throughout the year. We put on a lot of events. We do a scholarship program as well as a number of opportunities every single month throughout the state to get involved. So I appreciate you giving me this time to chat about how our food gets to our tables.
Down there to the very end.
7-0.
I always get the memos, but I brought a spare joke. And just in case. Okay. Thanks, Joe, for reminding me to print this. Okay. Lettuce is on sale this week for 99 cents a head. I did this just for you. A man walked into the produce section of his local supermarket and asked to buy a half a head of lettuce. The boy working in that department told him that they only sold whole heads of lettuce. The man was insistent that the boy ask his manager about the matter. Walking into the back room, the boy said to the manager, "Some dummy wants to buy a half a head of lettuce." As he finished his sentence, he turned to find the man standing right behind him. And he added, "And this gentleman kindly offered to buy the other half." The manager approved the deal, and the man went on his way. Later, the manager said to the boy, "I was impressed with the way you got yourself out of that situation earlier. We like people who can think on their feet. Where are you from, son?" "Alabama, sir," the boy replied. "Well, why did you leave Alabama?" the manager said. The boy said, "Sir, there's nothing there but prostitutes and football players." "Really?" said the manager. "My wife's from Alabama." "Get out of here," the boy said. "Who'd she play for?"